walked out on this stage, I'm sure you had your own preconceived assumptions about who I am, what I'm about, and what I'll share. I'm sure you looked at my dress and thought, that must be her favorite color since she wore it today. Or she thinks she's really cute in that, which I do. I'm sure you looked at my ring and thought, she must be married. But you have no idea who my spouse is, where they are, who they are, or if they left 3 months ago and I haven't been able to take off my ring. You also may be thinking, wow, she's really short. She must be young and love being fun-sized. But whatever you thought, you don't know, and you aren't really sure of what my story is. You don't know my story, and we all have them. And so do the students sitting in K-12 classrooms across the country. How are we creating a space for students to share their stories? How are we creating a space for students to craft their stories? How are we sure that the stories that we read and we use to teach our students reflect the lives that we live? You don't know my story. And in my story, this isn't my favorite color. However, it is my grandmother's favorite color. And I lost her in 2019. These shoes are my sister's favorite print. And I lost her in 2021. And they are part of my story, and a significant part too. You see, my grandmother always told me that I was her little teacher. And my sister always allowed me to play teacher with her. And she listened to my stories, the good ones and the bad ones too. And you know, I didn't realize the impact that reading, stories, teaching, and learning would have on me until that was all that I knew to do. You see, in my story, you wouldn't know that I struggled with depression and imposter syndrome because I've always felt that I wasn't enough. You see, in my story, you wouldn't know that when I lost my sister, I dropped out from my PhD program. I was prescribed antidepressants. I struggled with finding myself. And I even considered not ever re-enrolling in my program again. You see, my story may be unique to me, but the traumas and the tragedies that I've experienced are similar to the traumas and the tragedies that students are living every single day. About 61% of adults surveyed stated that they had experienced an adverse childhood experience by the time that they turned 18. And if I recall my own personal experiences in the classroom, I remember reading the stories of others and hearing the stories of others, but I don't remember reading a story about a character who had a lived experience like me. Honestly, it wasn't until I became a teacher that I realized how important representation in text and stories really was, and the impact that it had on my outlook for myself. During my first year as a teacher, I recall Dress Up Like a Book Here Today, and I chose the book Mary Had a Little Lamb. And in this book was an African American character, a young girl who loved fashion. And this is when I began to see that representation in text and stories was so important. I saw myself in Mary Had a Little Lamb. But when I thought back about my own experiences as a child in the classroom, I remember being raised on Dr. Seuss, Amelia Bedelia, Horrible Harry, the Boxcar Kids, you know, those stories. And yes, those stories were amazing. The characters in their books were awesome. But none of those characters reflect me or the lived experiences that I had. And as I continued to grow and grow through school, nothing much changed. You know, it became To Kill a Mockingbird, Great Gatsby, Great Fire, Scarlet Letter, Romeo and Juliet, the traditionals. But I truly believe that had a book captured my attention early on because it reflected my lived experience and it represented me in the text, I would have developed a love for reading way before. And you see, my thought is, how are we creating a love for reading for the students that are not largely represented in the text? Here we are in 2022, and we still have an issue with diversity in the text. Diversity is still an issue in children's books. In 1990, scholar Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop stated, "Books are like mirrors, and therefore reading is a means of self-affirmation." That idea is the inspiration behind the largely known image that shows just how badly children's books are failing our kids. In the image, you see children of color gaze into small, broken, cracked mirrors, whereas white children and bears and animals gaze into tall, strong, clear mirrors and see themselves. This is even more challenging and even more embarrassing because it shows just how much publishing companies are also failing our kids, as they are publishing more books with non-human characters like animals and white characters than they are characters with minority representation. But you see, there's a problem here because stories can heal. Stories can heal our nation. And when we put books and stories in the faces of our children, they have to see themselves reflected in the text. We have to introduce them and expose them to the literature where they are represented, the stories that they can learn and reflect on, the experiences that they may be living, the experiences where they may see their families and their loved ones reflected. You see, when I wrote my own personal book, I wrote a book because I was healing, a children's book, Sisters Forever, where I learned that I had to share my sister with a new friend named Angel. And in this book, you see two African American girls reflecting on an amazing, beautiful relationship, a sisterhood. And then an angel comes into the picture, and I have to share my sister with this angel. What I was sharing and what I was learning is that sometimes we have to share. And this story shows the symbolism of sisterhood, the symbolism of sharing, but also the symbolism of what I now know of sharing my sister with a heavenly angel. And this is how my organization, Bearby, was born. Bearby is books, bears, and therapy. And we have a mission to heal the hearts and minds through books and bears, one child at a time. We know that stories can heal. We know that hurt children become hurt adults, and angry children become angry adults, and bitter children become bitter adults, and broken children become broken adults, and hurt people hurt people. And we believe that stories can heal, and it is now time to break the cycle of hurt by using the stories that heal. Share your story even if it hurts. Share your story even if it's sad, because someone needs to hear it.